TryHackMe has released a new certification for junior pen testers called the PT1, and in this video, we are going to talk all about it. Now at the outset, let me be absolutely clear. This video is not sponsored by TryHackMe, but I did have early access to the exam. The reason for that is I volunteer on TryHackMe's QA team. What that means is I don't get paid, I'm not paid staff, but I volunteer my time to test new machines and new releases on TryHackMe to make sure they're at a good quality. So I had early access to the certification so I could test it, help find bugs, and make sure it is ready for the public release going out today. That being said, they did offer to pay me for the video, but I told TryHackMe no. Full disclosure, here's the email I responded with. If you want to pause this video and read the email for yourself, go ahead. Now, by making this video though, I do have a few gifts I can give back to you. Number one, there is a link in the description of this video that will give you 25% off the exam. This is not a kickback. I do not get paid if you use this link, but it does give you 25% off the price for the exam. Additionally, I have 2 vouchers for the PT1 exam that I'll be giving away. If you want to be eligible to win one of these vouchers, you need to join my Ko-Fi. Now, if you don't know what Ko-Fi is, it's like Patreon for creators, and I'm really trying to take my content, hack smarter, this whole thing that I've started to the next level. I have some really exciting plans for that I can't quite share yet, but if you want to be eligible, you just need to give on my Ko-Fi. You can give 50 cents, you can give $1. I really don't care what amount you give, but join my Ko-Fi, give a one-time gift, or become a member before June 10th. On June 10th, that is when this giveaway is going to close, and I'll do a drawing live on stream for the 2 people who win the PT1 vouchers that I have. All right, all that being said, we're going to cover 4 different things in this video. Number 1, we're going to spend some time reviewing the landing page. I want to help you see through the marketing language and really say what is the cert and what is the exam actually about. Number 2, we'll talk briefly about the exam process itself, the ID verification, whether or not there's proctoring, all of those common questions. Number 3, I'm going to give you some specific advice on how to pass the exam. As someone who beta tested the exam, and I'm friends with many of the authors of the exam, I have a little bit of insider knowledge. Now, I of course need to be careful what I say, but I think the things that I'm going to tell you are either going to make or break you when it comes to this exam. And finally, number 4, I'll share with you what I think this cert is doing well and some areas of improvement that I think should be done for the certification or future certifications looking forward. All that being said, let's dive into the landing page together and dive into this brand new certification. All right, here we are on the landing page, and we have this, the PT1, the offensive certification that gets you hired. Now, the first pushback I have right away is we don't know this. This certification just came out today. I cannot tell you with confidence that this certification will get you hired. Now, I do think based on the quality of it, it is going to catch on, and maybe in a year or 2, it really will be one of the main certs that will get you hired. But if you go to LinkedIn right now and you search for PT1, my guess is there's not going to be many, if any, jobs that list this just because it is brand new. But every certification has to start somewhere. But let me just be clear. I am not telling you if you get the PT1, you will get hired as a junior pen tester. I don't think you can say that since it is brand new as of today. Let's scroll through. There's my cool mug right there. And so we have industry recognized. Now, I think what TryHackMe is saying right here is that TryHackMe is industry recognized. Once again, the PT1 is not industry recognized at the recording of this video because it literally just released today. It's going to take a little bit of time for it to be industry recognized. On the other hand, if what they're saying is TryHackMe is industry recognized, well, absolutely it is. One of the biggest advantages of TryHackMe is right here, the flexible learning and all of the labs that come with the PT1 and just the TryHackMe platform in general. We'll get to pricing shortly, but this cert is incredibly affordable, and TryHackMe as a whole is incredibly affordable for the level and the quality and the content of the content that you get access to. Let's scroll through. It says certification built for the real world. And I do want to emphasize this. One of the things I really appreciate about this exam is it's very realistic. If you approach this exam like a CTF, you are going to fail. We'll come back to that when I give you some advice, but keep that in mind. It's worth repeating. If you approach this exam like a CTF, you will fail. Now, when I sat for the OSCP back in 2022, I passed the OSCP in 8 hours. I can tell you, at least from my experience, this exam and this cert is more difficult than the OSCP precisely because it's realistic and not CTF-y. And I think if you're not working in the field as a pen tester, you don't understand the difference between those two things. We'll talk about it once again later on in the video, but just know this is very real world as you work your way through this certification. We have a full engagement. It's modeled after a real pen test. It's not, can you hack this box? It's, can you think like a real attacker? On top of that, you have a professional report. When you're just popping shells and getting the root flag, you don't have to write a report. But to pass this exam, you have to write a professional report. You have to detail the vulnerabilities that you found. You have to calculate a CVSS score. You also have to give suggested remediation. So you really have to know what you are talking about, not just pop a shell, but how do you actually communicate like a real pen tester? And it's also real world scenarios. You're going to notice there's 3 different challenges to the certification. There's a web app portion, a NetSec portion, and Active Directory. You need to be solid on all 3 of these in order to be successful in this exam. Now, you can see kind of the marketing speak of what it tests in the exam, but really, here's my summary. It tests whether or not you will succeed as a junior penetration tester. Not are you good at CTS, but are you actually ready to be a penetration tester? We'll scroll through here. Here is the process. We complete the learning. We start the exam, blah, blah, get certified and get hired. Don't just take our word for it. Now, look, just to be clear, I did give a testimonial for the exam, but that's because this testimonial is true. I was not paid for the testimonial. I am not paid for this video, but my testimonial basically says everything I'm telling you in this video. But let's continue to scroll down here. You do get instant results on this exam, so you don't have to wait for someone to review your report. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, we will talk about. And now, how does it compare to other certifications? Now, one of the issues I had with the SAL 1 is they tended to bash other organizations and bash other certifications, and I do not like that language. Like, if your cert is truly good, let it stand on its own. And I feel like with the PT1, they are letting it stand on its own a lot better. I'm going to go ahead and take myself and make myself a lot smaller. I'll move myself over here. You guys can watch me move. Look, now I'm just a tiny little head over here so you can see this whole screen. But let's go through this. We have the PT1. It is practical. There are no multiple choice questions on here. It is all hands-on. It tests web app security, and this is more than just like, hey, upload this file. It's actually really difficult. The web app security part is by far, at least in my opinion, the most difficult part of this entire exam. It also tests network security, Active Directory, and realistic reporting, and you can see the cost is only $297. That is super affordable for a hands-on exam. You also have the Pen Test Plus right here through CompTIA. I happen to have the Pen Test Plus, and it is very much theoretical. There is nothing hands-on with it. I mean, technically, you have a few performance-based questions, but the Pen Test Plus does not tell you whether or not you can be a pen tester. It tells you whether or not you can answer a few multiple-choice questions. It's like just a little bit more difficult version of the Security Plus. You have the CEH. I'm not even going to speak on that, all right? Don't get the CEH unless you have to. You have these certs, though. These ones are incredible. So the PWPT is through TCM Security. That is their like junior web app pen tester cert. That does cover web app. It doesn't cover the other ones. It does have realistic reporting, but I would say a little more realistic because you have to write a full report and it's graded by a person. And we'll talk about that later on as I give you the pros and cons of this. And the PJPT is the junior pen testing cert through TCM, which also an incredible cert. TCM Security is an amazing organization and an amazing academy when it comes to this kind of training, but it doesn't cover web app security. It does do a good job, though, of network security, AD, and realistic reporting. And then you have the EJPT, which I actually don't have any experience with, so I cannot really speak on the EJPT too much. But when we're looking at this, just price point, you can see that the PT1 actually isn't the cheapest on the list. You can see that the PJPT is $249, whereas the PT1 is $297, and the EJPT is $249, whereas the PT1 is $297. That being said, I do think the price is worth it. We can dive down here. You can see we have a 48 window to work your way through the exam. and you might need the full 48 hours. We're going to talk about that when I give you the advice, but you do have a 48-hour exam to work through it. It's $297, but if you're already a premium subscriber, you can get a 15% discount, or if you're watching my video, once again, the link in the description will give you 25% off the exam. The learnings included: get 3 months premium access to Cybersecurity 101 in the Junior Pentester Pass, and you get 1 free retake, which is always helpful. When you first go into exam, you really have no idea what to take, so your first attempt might just be you figuring out the exam environment and working your way through it. So if you fail, you do have 1 free retake. Scroll through here, you can read all this other information if you would like, but now I want to talk about the exam process itself. When you go through this exam, you have the 48 window and it starts ticking, but you need to do a full ID verification. So you set up the exam, they have a third-party service where you take a picture of your ID, the front of it and the back of it, you verify your ID, and then you're given scope information, you're given all 3 exam environments, and you can actually jump from one exam environment to the other. So let's say you're working on the AppSec or the web app portion, and let's say you work on it for 4 hours, but you get stuck. Take a break, and one of the best things to do is dive into a different portion. So you can go right from the web app into the network or into the Active Directory, but you can jump around as you work your way through the exam. Additionally, the exam is super stable, at least from my experience. Other certifications, one of the pieces of advice I give you is say, hey, as soon as you get in, just reboot all the machines. There might be a port that's not open. That was not my experience. I think TryHackMe did a really good job of making the exam experience stable, but just know, you do have an ID verification process. The clock does start ticking when you start the exam, but you are not proctored. No one is watching your screen. No one is watching your webcam, which could lead to the question, how does TryHackMe prevent cheating? And my answer is, I don't know for sure. I mean, generally you could cheat on this exam, I suppose, but I would be careful. TryHackMe has ways of figuring out if you're cheating, but not only that, the exam is fully randomized. So I did multiple attempts on it because I was testing the exam, and I realized in my second attempt, like, oh shoot, the vulnerabilities I found before aren't here anymore. Now I have to find new vulnerabilities because each time you do the exam, it is randomized. So you're not going to be able to find some silly brain dump answer key out there. And that's the beauty of hands-on exams. When it comes to multiple choice exams, there are brain dumps. And silly people use the brain dumps, but really you're only cheating yourself. You cannot brain dump a hands-on exam, but I do enjoy that it's not proctored. When I did the OSCP, that was fully proctored, and it's just a little bit awkward knowing that someone is watching me for the next 24 hours and watching my screen, and I stream. Like, I'm used to being on camera, but that still intimidated me a little bit. So you are not proctored in that way, but the clock does start ticking when you dive into the exam. Now, let's talk about some specific advice as you work your way through this exam. Number 1, do not treat this like a CTF. I said this once already when we were looking at the landing page, but it's so important it is worth saying again. If you treat the exam, especially the web app portion, like a CTF, you are going to fail hard. The goal is not just to pop shells. The goal during a penetration test is a more holistic overview of the environment. You find vulnerabilities. You may or may not be able to chain them together, but you're looking for vulnerabilities, not just trying to pop a shell. Additionally, when you dive into this exam, make sure you read the scope closely. All right? When you start the exam, you're going to be given a scope, and the scope has a lot of details in it. It's easy to skim it. But let me tell you something. When you skim the scope for a real penetration test, you break the law. When you skim the scope in the PT1, you are going to fail. So read the scope closely, read it slowly, and make sure you take notes on what it tells you in the scope. Because if you read closely, the scope is going to give you some hints on specific vulnerabilities you should be looking for as you work your way through the exam. Finally, I would encourage you to take the exam seriously. I actually made this mistake when I was QA testing it. I thought, this is just a junior penetration tester exam. I'm a penetration tester. I've been doing it for a while. I make videos. I solve machines all the time. Like, I could probably solve this thing in just a few hours. I mean, I passed the OSCP in 8 hours. Surely the junior PT1 exam from TryHackMe is going to be a walk in the park. It was not. This exam is actually incredibly difficult from my experience, or I'm just a noob, or it's a combination of both. But I first dove into it with like 2 hours. I had one night where I had 2 hours free, and I was like, all right, let me just really quick take these 2 hours and knock out this exam. I did not knock out the exam in 2 hours. This exam is difficult. Make sure you take it seriously, you actually prep, and you work your way through the labs as you prepare for the exam. All right, number 4. Final part of this video, what does a cert do well, and what are some areas of improvement? Well, I have 4 areas that the cert does really well. Number 1, the price is affordable. In a world like the OSCP, where you are sacrificing everything in your life just to get one exam attempt at it for 90 days of lab access, this exam is incredibly affordable. A little under $300 for a hands-on exam, all of the training included, and it's TryHackMe. So it really is a well-done exam and well-done training. Number 2, the exam environment is stable. Other certifications, if you go on Reddit, the advice is literally, hey, before you start the exam, just go ahead and revert every machine because half the time they're broken. The exam environment here is incredibly stable. TryHackMe has done a lot of work behind the scenes. I don't know the secret formula that goes into it, but they've done a really good job of setting up the networks in such a way that it's stable, but you can also reset it anytime you want if you feel like something is broken. But the exam environment is stable, and that's a huge plus for the certification. Number 3, it is super realistic. And it is very difficult, especially the web app portion of the exam, but I think that's a good thing. When I sat for the OSCP, like I said before, I passed it, but it really felt like a glorified CTF. Just grind out these machines in the next 24 hours, write a report, and you are done. But when it comes to this, you still need to grind out some machines, but you need to approach it from a real-world perspective of finding vulnerabilities, even if it's not popping a shell, but checking for all kinds of vulnerabilities as you work your way through the machine. Very realistic to what I encounter in my day-to-day job as a penetration tester. And then finally, going along with that, number 4 is focusing on vulnerabilities, not just getting root. When I am doing a typical penetration test, my goal is not to upload or bypass a file upload and drop a PHP shell. Now, I have done that, and it feels amazing when that happens, but a penetration test is once again a much holistic overview of the application, finding every vulnerability that you are able to find. But now let's talk about some areas of improvement. I think the PT1 cert does a lot of things well, but I do think there might be some big areas to work on or to improve on, or just to be aware of as you work your way through the exam. Number 1, I'm not a fan of the 48-hour window. You have 48 hours to work through 3 different environments and essentially write 3 different reports. That's not realistic. I mean, I'll just give you a snapshot. For a typical web app pen test in the real world, you have 5, maybe even 10 days to work on that web app and to work on your report as well. You have a lot more time in the real world. They are combining a web app, a network pen test, and an Active Directory environment, all within a 48-hour time frame, including the reporting that you have to do. You don't get extra time. You have to do the exam and the reporting in that 48-hour window. I think Hack the Box does a really good job with their certifications. They have the CBTS is the big flagship one for pen testing that they have, but you are given 10 days, if my memory serves me correct, to work through the exam and to write up a professional report, which is much more realistic and more real world. So that's one thing I'm just not a fan of, the 48-hour time. I think minimum it should be 3 days. Ideally, the exam should be 5 days to give it a more realistic overview of what a penetration test is actually like. Number 2, when we were looking at the landing page, it says you get your results instantly. Well, the reason you get your results instantly is because they are likely using an LLM or AI, whatever it is in the back end, to grade your report. Now, it's one thing, I think, to grade the flags and everything with AI or LLM, but I just am not a fan of using that to grade a pen test report. Now, I know if they were doing it manually, that might increase the price, but that's where I think an organization like TCM and Hack the Box really shine. Like TCM's PNPT cert, their penetration testing cert, kind of their expert level cert there. I don't think it's expert level. I don't remember the levels they have, but not their junior cert, kind of their mid-level cert. You have to write a report and do a debrief, which means you have to speak about your report and answer questions about it just like you would in a real penetration test. It's one thing to write a report. It's another thing to have the report reviewed by a real person who works as a pen tester, and it's even more to then have to speak and debrief on the report, which is what I I do as I'm doing penetration testing. So although the instant results might look like a positive, I would push back on that a little bit. I think there is a lot of benefit to having a real human being review the pen test report and see what the student is looking at or what the pen tester is looking at. It's more real world, and it just removes the AI slop that we tend to see when AI is involved. Now, that being said, from my experience with the exam, I didn't have any issues with the AI grader, so my fear there might be uncalled for, but I'm always a little hesitant when AI is grading a pen test report for a certification. And number 3, there are aspects in the exam, especially the web app portion, that I think are more difficult than what you need for a junior level. I know I keep coming back to the web app part, but that's the part that I think is the most difficult. I don't want to give too much away, but I honestly think it might be a tad bit too difficult with the time that you are given alongside the network and the Active Directory. You don't have to be a web app god in order to become a junior pen tester. Matter of fact, when I became a junior pen tester, I knew very little about web apps. I got up to speed very quickly doing some other resources than doing my first couple of pen tests, but I don't know. I honestly feel like the difficulty level for this cert is above a junior level. I'm thinking more mid-level for the cert's difficulty, but I'm not TryHackMe. They're the ones who designed the cert, but that's my honest feedback. I think it might be a little bit too difficult for the junior level that they are aiming for. And then finally, one other piece of feedback is that there are very few TryHackMe machines, if any, that prepare you for this type of certification. TryHackMe machines, as I've said before, many of them are very CTF-y or puzzly. They're not real world. Now, TryHackMe has been making a big change to this. I've noticed that recent machines have been much more real world, and I know that's what they're aiming for because, well, I'm on their QA team, so I see the machines that are coming through, and I see the things that we are reviewing before approving a machine, and really focusing on real world machines. That being said, even the real world machines are focused on, hey, popping a shell, getting on the network, privilege escalation. There are no machines, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are any machines that are this more holistic approach where we're finding maybe 10 vulnerabilities in one web app, and each time we find a vulnerability, we get a new flag for that. There are some that are similar to that, but there's nothing quite on the platform that emulates what you're going to encounter on this exam, so it's a little bit hard to prepare for. That said, this is the day it releases. Maybe TryHackMe is going to have some incredible content they're coming out with to help people prep for this exam. But overall, my thoughts about the exam and about the certification is this is an incredible cert, and you should try it. It is one of the most real-world certifications I have done from my perspective as a penetration tester. There's a lot of pros to it. There's a few cons or areas of improvement. But seriously, you should give this cert a shot. Just as a reminder, 25% off in the description of this video, and I have 2 vouchers I'm going to give away. Join my Ko-Fi community, give something, or become a member, and you'll be eligible for that giveaway before June 10th. But let me know what you think. What do you think of this exam? What do you think of my review? Do you think I'm just a sellout? Like, you can let me know in the comments your thoughts on all of this. But if you take the exam, or if you're going to take it, let me know. I would love to hear from you about your experience as you work your way through the exam. But hey, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one.